Maya Chun had grown used to the whispers. They followed her through the narrow hallways of Riverside High School like shadows she could never quite escape. The words hurt less now than they did 3 years ago, but they still stung in quiet moments when she let her guard down. "There goes the loser girl," someone muttered as she walked past the lockers, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder. The fabric was frayed at the edges, held together with duct tape she had carefully applied to make it last another semester. She kept her eyes forward, focusing on the chipped linoleum tiles beneath her feet. Each step was measured, deliberate. She had learned not to react. Reactions only gave them more ammunition, more reasons to laugh and point. Her mother had taught her that silence could be a shield, even if it felt like swallowing glass sometimes. The cafeteria was the worst part of each day. Maya carried her lunch in a brown paper bag, the same one she had been reusing for weeks. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich she had made that morning and an apple her neighbor had given her from their tree. She sat at the corner table near the emergency exit, the one nobody wanted because it was too close to where the kitchen staff dumped the trash bins. Across the room, Jennifer Morrison held court at the center table. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves over her designer jacket. Around her sat the elite of Riverside High, the students whose parents drove luxury cars and owned vacation homes in places Maya had only seen in magazines. Jennifer's laugh rang out, clear and confident, and Maya knew without looking that she was probably the subject of whatever joke was being told. "I heard her dad left when she was like, what, 10? Jennifer's voice carried across the cafeteria, loud enough to be heard, but quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability. "And her mom works 3 jobs just to keep their trailer from getting repossessed." The facts were mostly accurate, which made them hurt more. Maya's father had left when she was 9, not 10, disappearing one Tuesday morning without explanation or goodbye. Her mother did work multiple jobs, cleaning offices at night, waitressing during breakfast shifts, and doing alterations for a dry cleaner on weekends. They did live in a trailer park on the edge of town, where the rent was cheap and the winters were brutal. But Jennifer didn't know the whole story. None of them did. They didn't know about the college textbooks Maya checked out from the public library, studying subjects that weren't even offered at their school. They didn't know about the hours she spent researching, planning, dreaming of a future that existed far beyond the boundaries of this small town. After lunch, Maya headed to her favorite place in the entire school, the one sanctuary where she felt truly at peace. The library was tucked away on the second floor, a forgotten corner that most students avoided. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly librarian, smiled warmly as Maya entered. "Back again, dear?" Mrs. Patterson asked, though she already knew the answer. Maya came every day during her free period and often stayed late after school until the library closed at 5. "Always," Maya replied, managing a small smile. It was easier to smile here, where judgment felt distant and the smell of old books provided comfort. She settled into her usual spot by the window, pulling out a notebook filled with careful handwriting. The pages contained notes on physics, advanced mathematics, military history, and physical fitness routines. To anyone glancing over her shoulder, it might have looked like the random interests of a curious student. But these notes represented something much more focused, much more determined. Maya had decided on her path 2 years ago, on a cold November evening when she had been at her lowest point. Jennifer and her friends had cornered her after school, mocking her clothes, her lunch, her very existence. They had dumped her backpack in a puddle, scattering her carefully completed homework across the wet pavement. She had gathered the soggy papers in silence, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. That night, scrolling through her ancient laptop that took 10 minutes to boot up, she had stumbled across a documentary about Navy SEALs. She watched as men and women pushed themselves beyond what seemed humanly possible, overcoming obstacles that would break ordinary people. The training was brutal, the standards impossibly high, but those who made it through became part of something extraordinary. Something clicked in Maya's mind that night. She didn't just want to escape her circumstances. She wanted to become someone so undeniably capable that no one could ever look down on her again. She wanted to prove that where you started didn't determine where you finished. And she wanted to do it in the most spectacular way possible. The Navy had recently opened all combat roles to women, including the elite SEAL teams. The statistics were daunting. Less than 1% of applicants made it through basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, commonly known as BUD/S. For women, the numbers were even more challenging. But Maya didn't care about statistics. She cared about possibility. From that moment, every decision she made was calculated to move her toward her goal. She woke up at 4:30 every morning and ran 5 miles before school, regardless of weather. Her route took her past sleeping houses and empty streets, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. She did push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups using a bar she had installed in the doorframe of her tiny bedroom. She swam at the public pool whenever she could afford the $2 admission fee. The physical training was only part of it. Maya knew that SEALs needed to be mentally sharp, capable of strategic thinking under extreme pressure. So she taught herself advanced mathematics and navigation. She studied military tactics and history. She learned everything she could about leadership, teamwork, and decision-making in crisis situations. Her mother noticed the changes, but said little. Sarah Chun worked too many hours to monitor her daughter's activities closely, but she saw the determination in Maya's eyes and recognized it as something precious. She had carried that same determination once, before life had worn it down. If her daughter wanted to chase an impossible dream, Sarah would not be the one to discourage her. "You're doing homework?" her mother asked one evening, finding Maya surrounded by books at their small kitchen table. The trailer's heater rattled and hummed, fighting against the winter cold seeping through thin walls. "Something like that," Maya replied, not looking up from her notebook where she was calculating the physics of underwater demolition. Sarah Chun set down her purse, heavy with exhaustion, and looked at her daughter with a mixture of concern and pride. "You know you don't have to prove anything to those kids at school, right? They don't define your worth." "I know, Mom," Maya said, and she meant it. This journey wasn't about them anymore. It had started as a response to their cruelty, but it had evolved into something much bigger. This was about discovering who she could become when she refused to accept limitations. The months passed, and Maya's body transformed. She lost the softness of adolescence and gained lean muscle and endurance. Her mile time dropped from 9 minutes to 6. She could do 50 push-ups without stopping, then 75, then 100. The physical changes were obvious to anyone paying attention, but at school, no one really looked at her closely enough to notice. She remained the loser girl, the poor kid in second-hand clothes with the absent father and overworked mother. She remained invisible except when she served as a target for casual cruelty. And that was fine. Maya had learned the value of being underestimated. In her junior year, she met Coach Bradley, the retired Marine who taught history and ran the school's small athletic program. He noticed her running one morning when he arrived early for work, saw her pushing through her 5th mile with the kind of determination he recognized from his own military days. "You training for something?" he called out as she passed the school entrance. Maya stopped, surprised to be addressed. "Just staying in shape," she said carefully. Coach Bradley studied her with eyes that had seen many young people over many years. He recognized something in her bearing, in the way she carried herself despite her circumstances. "You ever think about the military?" "Every day," Maya answered honestly, and something in her voice made him take notice. That conversation led to others. Coach Bradley became an unofficial mentor, offering advice and sharing his own experiences. He helped her understand what recruiters would look for, how to prepare for the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, and what the reality of military life truly entailed. When she told him she wanted to try for the SEALs, he didn't laugh or tell her it was impossible. Instead, he helped her train harder. "The biggest challenge isn't physical," he told her during one of their morning sessions. "It's mental. BUD/S is designed to break you, to find your quitting point. The people who make it through are the ones who simply refuse to quit, no matter what." "I won't quit," Maya said, and it wasn't bravado. It was simple fact. She had been pushed to her quitting point many times already in her young life, and she had never given in. Every insult, every moment of humiliation, every hardship had only made her more determined. By the spring of her senior year, Maya was ready to take her ASVAB. She scored in the 98th percentile, shocking the recruiter who had administered the test. Her physical fitness scores were equally impressive. When she told the Navy recruiter she wanted to pursue a SEAL contract, he was skeptical but intrigued. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said, leaning back in his chair at the recruiting office. "The odds are long, very long. But if you're serious, we can make it happen." "I'm serious," Maya replied. She had never been more serious about anything in her life. The process moved forward. Medical exams, background checks, paperwork that seemed endless. Through it all, Maya maintained her routine. School, training, studying. She told no one about her plans except her mother and Coach Bradley. At school, she remained the quiet girl in the corner, the one people looked through rather than at. Graduation approached, and with it came the annual senior class assembly. The principal droned on about bright futures and unlimited potential, words that felt hollow to Maya. Jennifer Morrison gave a speech as class president, talking about the bonds they had formed and the memories they would cherish forever. Maya sat in the back row, counting down the minutes until she could leave this place forever. After the assembly, students gathered in small groups, making plans for the summer and beyond. Some were heading to prestigious universities. Others were taking gap years to travel or pursue internships. A few would attend community college or head straight into the workforce. Maya listened to their conversations, feeling detached from it all. Her future was set, but it was a future none of them could imagine. "What about you, Chin?" someone asked, catching her off guard. It was Marcus Webb, one of the few students who had never been outright cruel to her. "What are your plans?" Maya considered lying, keeping her secret a little longer. But something made her tell the truth. "I enlisted," she said simply. "I ship out for basic training in July." The conversation around her stopped. Jennifer Morrison turned, her perfectly shaped eyebrows raised in surprise. "You're joining the military?" She made it sound like Maya had announced plans to join the circus. "Yes," Maya confirmed, meeting Jennifer's gaze steadily. "Huh," Jennifer said, exchanging glances with her friends. "I guess that makes sense for someone like you. Not really any other options, right?" The dismissal in her voice was clear. The military was for people who couldn't do better, in her worldview. It was a fallback, not a choice. Maya said nothing. Let them think what they wanted. They would understand soon enough, though by then, she would be far away from this place and these people. She had learned long ago that trying to defend yourself to people who had already decided your worth was a waste of energy. The final weeks of school passed in a blur. Finals came and went. Maya maintained her grades, not because they mattered much now, but because she had never allowed herself to give less than her best. On the last day of school, she cleaned out her locker, throwing away old papers and folders she no longer needed. She felt nothing as she walked out of Riverside High School for the last time. No nostalgia, no sadness, no sense of ending. Only anticipation for what came next. Her mother threw her a small graduation party at their trailer. A few neighbors came, bringing homemade dishes and cards with small amounts of money tucked inside. Coach Bradley attended, presenting her with a book about Navy SEAL history that he had signed with a personal message of encouragement. It was a modest celebration, nothing like the elaborate parties thrown for students like Jennifer Morrison, but it was filled with genuine affection and support. "I'm proud of you." Her mother said that the bus that took Maya to the military entrance processing station was cold despite the summer heat outside. She sat near the back, watching the familiar landscape of her hometown fade into the distance. Other recruits filled the seats around her, some excited, some nervous, all heading toward the same uncertain future. Nobody spoke much during the long ride. Basic training at Great Lakes Naval Station hit her like a physical force. The drill instructors screamed constantly, their voices hoarse from years of breaking down civilians and rebuilding them as sailors. Wake-up calls came at impossible hours. Physical training pushed her body to limits she thought she had already found. The days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion, adrenaline, and constant movement. But Maya had prepared for this. While other recruits struggled with the early morning runs, she paced herself with practiced ease. While others failed their initial fitness tests, she exceeded the minimum standards. The push-ups, sit-ups, and runs that crushed some of her fellow recruits were challenges she had been meeting for years in the pre-dawn darkness of her hometown. The drill instructors noticed. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a compact woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, pulled Maya aside after the third week of training. "Chun, She barked, hands on her hips. You're not like most of the soft civilians we get here. Where do you train before this? At home, Chief, Maya replied, standing at attention. Started 2 years ago. Rodriguez circled her like a predator examining prey. You got plans beyond basic? Or are you just here for the education benefits? I have a contract for BUD/S, Chief. I shipped to Coronado after A school. The chief's expression shifted slightly, revealing something that might have been respect or might have been pity. SEAL training. You know how many women have made it through? Not many, Chief. But someone has to be first in their class. Rodriguez almost smiled. Almost. Confidence is good. Arrogance will get you killed. Remember the difference. But after that conversation, she pushed Maya harder during training, demanding more, accepting nothing but excellence. It was clear she was preparing her for what came next. The weeks of basic training passed in a structured rhythm. Maya learned to shoot, to march, to navigate by the stars. She learned Navy protocol and military law. She learned to function on minimal sleep and maximum stress. Most importantly, she learned about the people around her, how different personalities responded to pressure, who could be counted on and who would crumble. She made few close friends, preferring to maintain the same quiet reserve she had developed in high school. But her bunkmates respected her competence and her willingness to help others improve. When someone struggled with a skill, Maya would offer quiet assistance after lights out, showing them techniques that worked, sharing the knowledge she had accumulated through years of self-study. Graduation from basic training came with little fanfare. Families attended, proud parents taking photos of their newly minted sailors. Maya's mother couldn't afford the trip from their hometown, but she had sent a card that Maya kept tucked in her pocket during the ceremony. That was enough. She didn't need the pomp and circumstance. She needed to keep moving forward. After basic came the Navy's dive prep course and additional screening for SEAL candidates. This was where the real sorting began, where the merely fit were separated from the exceptional. The physical standards increased dramatically. The mental pressure intensified. Candidates who looked strong on paper discovered they lacked the crucial element that separated SEALs from regular sailors: the absolute refusal to quit regardless of pain or exhaustion or fear. Maya thrived. The underwater training that terrified some candidates felt natural to her, perhaps because she had spent so many hours in the public pool back home, practicing breath control and underwater swimming. The endless physical training sessions that ground down other candidates were just extensions of the routine she had maintained for years. The mental warfare tactics the instructors employed, designed to find each person's breaking point, failed to locate hers because she had already been broken and rebuilt by a different kind of cruelty. You're too calm, one of the instructors told her during a particularly brutal session. That's unusual. Most people show more stress. Stress doesn't change the situation, Maya replied, treading water during a pool evolution that had been going on for hours. It just wastes energy. The instructor nodded slowly, making a note on his waterproof clipboard. She had passed another invisible test. Not everyone made it through the screening. Candidates dropped out daily, ringing the brass bell that signified their voluntary withdrawal. Each ring echoed across the compound, a sound that became the soundtrack of their training. Some rang it after injury. Some after discovering the training was beyond their capabilities. Some simply because they realized this life wasn't what they wanted. Maya never considered ringing the bell. Not during the coldest ocean swims. Not during the longest runs in heavy gear. Not during the times when her body screamed for rest, and every muscle felt like it was tearing itself apart. Quitting simply wasn't an option her mind would process. Finally, after months of screening and preparation, she received her orders for BUD/S. She would be heading to Coronado, California, to Naval Special Warfare Center. This was what she had been working toward for 3 years. Everything up until now had been prologue. The flight to California felt surreal. Maya pressed her face against the airplane window, watching the Pacific Ocean glitter beneath the morning sun. Somewhere down there was the beach where she would spend the next 6 months being tested in ways most people couldn't imagine. Somewhere down there was the path to becoming something extraordinary. Naval Special Warfare Center sat on Coronado Island, a strip of land connected to San Diego by a narrow isthmus. The base was smaller than she expected, but dense with focused intensity. Everyone here had a purpose. Everyone here was either training to become a SEAL or supporting those who were. There was no room for distraction or doubt. The first phase of BUD/S training, known simply as first phase, focused on physical conditioning. This was where most candidates failed, unable to handle the volume and intensity of the training. The days began before dawn with runs on the beach, the soft sand making every step a battle. Then came ocean swims in cold water that leached heat from the body and tested mental resolve. Then came endless circuits of push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups until failure, followed by more runs, more swims, more bodyweight exercises. The instructors pushed them constantly, looking for weakness, testing limits. They made them carry boats on their heads, heavy inflatable craft that seemed to get heavier with each step. They made them race through obstacle courses designed to find and exploit any physical deficiency. They made them hold uncomfortable positions for extended periods, muscles shaking with fatigue, minds screaming to give in. Maya's class started with 140 candidates. By the end of the first week, 20 had rung the bell. By the end of the second week, another 15 were gone. The attrition was relentless, a steady erosion that left only the most determined. She noticed something during those early weeks. The biggest, strongest candidates weren't necessarily the ones who made it through. Physical ability mattered, but mental toughness mattered more. The former college athletes with impressive physiques sometimes quit when they encountered their first real limitation. But the smaller candidates, the ones who had to work harder for every bit of fitness, often persevered because they were used to fighting uphill battles. Hell Week came at the end of first phase, 5.5 days of continuous training with no more than 4 hours of total sleep. This was the crucible, the week designed to break all but the most resilient. The instructors warned them in advance, telling them exactly what was coming, knowing that the anticipation was part of the torture. The week began on a Sunday evening with Breakout, a chaotic explosion of noise and movement designed to shock candidates out of any sense of calm. Instructors set off explosions, shouted through bullhorns, made them roll in the sand, and surf until they were caked with grit that would stay in every crevice of their bodies for days. From that moment, Hell Week became a blur of constant activity. They ran and swam and carried boats and logs. They did calisthenics until their muscles failed, then did more. They sat in the ocean until they shivered uncontrollably, then got out only to get back in. The cold became everything, seeping into bones, making thought difficult and movement painful. The lack of sleep turned reality strange and dreamlike. Candidates hallucinated, seeing things that weren't there, falling asleep while running or swimming. Maya moved through it all in a state of focused detachment. She learned to sleep while marching, taking microseconds of rest even while her body continued moving. She learned to ignore the cold by focusing on small tasks, completing one more push-up, taking one more step, surviving one more minute. She learned that the human body could continue functioning long past the point where the mind insisted it should stop. The instructors targeted her specifically at times, knowing that female candidates faced additional scrutiny. They made her repeat evolutions when they were satisfied with her performance, just to see if she would get angry or frustrated. They gave her impossible tasks and watched to see how she would respond. But Maya had years of practice dealing with people who wanted her to fail. She met every challenge with the same calm determination, doing what was required and nothing more. On Wednesday night of Hell Week, something shifted. Many of the weaker candidates had already quit, leaving a core group who were clearly going to make it through. The instructors seemed to recognize this, and while they continued to push hard, there was a subtle change in the atmosphere. This group had proven something essential about themselves. Maya was doing push-ups in the sand. Her class gathered in neat rows on the beach while instructors shouted encouragement and insults in equal measure. Her arms trembled with exhaustion, muscles that had been pushed past failure for days now running on willpower alone. Beside her, a candidate named Torres began to struggle, his form falling apart. "Lock it out, Torres," she muttered between repetitions, keeping her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Mind over matter. You got this." Torres managed 3 more push-ups before collapsing face-first into the sand. He lay there for a moment, and Maya could see the war happening inside him, the battle between the part that wanted to quit and the part that refused to give in. Finally, he pushed himself back up and continued, his form still terrible, but his determination intact. An instructor had noticed the exchange. He walked over, standing above Maya while she continued her push-ups. You got time to coach other people, Chun? Maybe you're not working hard enough. No, instructor, she replied, maintaining her rhythm. Just reminding my teammate what he already knows. The instructor almost smiled. It was these small moments, Maya learned, that revealed character. Not the big dramatic challenges, but the quiet choices made when exhausted and suffering. Helping a teammate cost her nothing but might make the difference between him finishing or quitting. That was what the instructors really wanted to see. Not individual excellence, but the willingness to elevate the team. Hell Week ended on Friday afternoon with what the instructors called Breakout, a final massive evolution involving every remaining candidate. They had to race through obstacles, swim to a distant point and back, carry boats over sand dunes, and complete a final round of calisthenics. It was brutal, but it had an end point, which made it bearable. Everything had an end point if you could just hold on long enough. When it was finally over, they gathered on the beach, 53 candidates remaining from the 140 who had started. Maya stood among them, every muscle aching, her body coated in sand and salt, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had survived Hell Week. Most people never would. Most people never would even try. The instructors walked among them. Their usual hardness softened slightly. Congratulations, the senior instructor said. You've made it through the worst of first phase. That doesn't mean you're SEALs. You still have a long way to go. But you've proven you have what it takes to at least try. Get some rest. You've earned it. Rest meant being allowed to sleep for 12 hours straight. Maya crashed in her barracks bunk, unconscious before her head fully settled on the pillow. When she woke, her body felt like it belonged to someone else, stiff and sore in ways she hadn't experienced before. But she had made it through. She was still here. The remaining weeks of first phase passed in a similar rhythm of intense physical training, though nothing matched the sustained brutality of Hell Week. Candidates continued to drop out, unable to handle the injuries, the exhaustion, or the mental pressure. But the core group who had survived Hell Week mostly made it through to second phase. Second phase focused on combat diving. This was where BUD/S training got truly dangerous. Candidates learned to use scuba gear, to navigate underwater, to handle equipment failures. They spent long hours in the pool, practicing procedures until they became automatic. The instructors would deliberately sabotage their equipment, creating emergencies that had to be handled correctly or risk drowning. Pool competency testing was particularly challenging. Instructors would attack candidates underwater, ripping out their breathing equipment, tying their air hoses in knots, spinning them until they were disoriented. The candidate had to remain calm, solve the problems, and surface in control. Panic meant failure, and failure meant being dropped from the program. Maya excelled at the dive phase. The time she had spent in her hometown's public pool, teaching herself to stay calm underwater, paid dividends now. When instructors tried to make her panic, she simply went through the procedures she had practiced thousands of times. Breathe, think, act. The water was just another environment, no more hostile than the high school hallways had been, and she had learned to navigate those without panic. Graduation from BUD/S came on a clear California morning. 29 candidates stood in formation, wearing their dress uniforms, about to receive the trident pin that marked them as Navy SEALs. 29 out of 140 who had started. Maya stood among them, one of only 2 women who had made it through this iteration of the course, feeling a sense of achievement that went beyond words. Her mother had saved enough money to fly out for the ceremony. Sarah Chun sat in the audience wearing her best dress, the one she usually reserved for church, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter receive her trident. This pin, this small piece of metal, represented everything Maya had worked toward, everything she had overcome. After the ceremony, Maya introduced her mother to her instructors and classmates. The other SEALs treated Sarah with genuine respect, understanding what it meant for a single mother to raise a daughter capable of making it through their program. They knew that Maya's toughness came from somewhere, and, seeing her mother, they could understand the source. "You raised an exceptional sailor," Senior Chief Peterson told Sarah, shaking her hand. "Your daughter never quit, never complained, just kept pushing forward. That's rare, even among the candidates we get here." Sarah squeezed Maya's hand tightly, pride radiating from every pore. This moment made every hard shift, every missed meal, every sacrifice worthwhile. Her daughter had done something incredible, something most people wouldn't even dream of attempting. But graduation from BUD/S was just the beginning. Maya still had to complete SEAL qualification training, an additional 6 months of advanced instruction. This phase taught everything from advanced weapons systems to medical training to language skills. The focus shifted from proving you wouldn't quit to proving you could operate effectively as part of a SEAL team. During this phase, Maya learned Arabic, spending hours each day mastering the language's complexities. She learned advanced trauma medicine, training on realistic mannequins that could bleed and go into shock. She learned to shoot from helicopters, to fast rope from hovering aircraft, to parachute into hostile territory. Each skill built on the others, creating a comprehensive toolkit for special operations. The medical training resonated with her in unexpected ways. She had always been good with her hands, careful and precise, and found that she had an aptitude for emergency medicine. The instructors noticed, suggesting she consider specializing as a team medic once she reached her first command. It was a crucial role, one that commanded respect within the teams. Midway through training, Maya received a letter forwarded from her hometown. She almost didn't open it, assuming it was junk mail or maybe something from a former teacher. But curiosity won out, and she tore open the envelope while sitting in her barracks room. The letter was from Jennifer Morrison. Maya stared at the familiar handwriting, memories flooding back. The girl who had made her life miserable, who had coined the nickname Loser Girl, who had represented everything Maya was trying to escape. What could she possibly want? The letter began with an apology. Jennifer had heard through hometown gossip that Maya was in SEL training. The news had shocked her, made her reflect on how she had treated Maya in school. She wanted to apologize for her cruelty, to acknowledge that she had been wrong. The letter went on for 3 pages, detailing Jennifer's own struggles in college, her growing awareness of how privileged and sheltered her upbringing had been, her recognition of the strength it must have taken for Maya to pursue such an ambitious path. Maya read the letter twice, trying to decide how she felt. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated, to revel in this admission that she had been underestimated. But mostly she felt nothing. Jennifer's opinion, her apology, her belated recognition, none of it mattered anymore. That life, those people, they belonged to a version of Maya that no longer existed. She put the letter in her footlocker and never answered it. There was nothing to say. She had already moved beyond needing Jennifer Morrison's validation or apology. The girl who had needed those things had died somewhere on the beaches of Coronado, replaced by someone harder and more capable. Training continued. Maya learned to work with K-9 units, understanding how the dogs could be invaluable assets in combat operations. She learned advanced navigation techniques, able to find her way through any terrain with minimal equipment. She learned the finer points of mission planning, understanding how to balance risk and reward, speed and security. She also learned about the culture of the SEAL teams, the unwritten rules that govern behavior, the importance of humility despite extraordinary capability, the expectation that you would always put the team before yourself, the understanding that every operator, regardless of rank, had a voice in planning and decision-making. It was a meritocracy in the truest sense, where your ideas were judged on their merit, not on your position or how long you had been in the teams. Finally, after more than a year of continuous training, Maya received her first team assignment. She would be joining SEAL Team 5, based in Coronado, as part of a squadron preparing for deployment. This was it. Everything she had worked for had led to this moment. Her new team leader, Lieutenant Commander James Harrison, was a veteran of multiple deployments with a reputation for being demanding but fair. He met with each new team member individually, assessing their capabilities and figuring out how best to employ them. "Chun," he said when Maya entered his office, "I've reviewed your training records. Impressive performance across the board. Top scores in medical training, languages, and land warfare. You considering going into medicine as a specialty? Yes, sir, Maya replied. If the team needs it. Harrison nodded. We always need good medics. But I also need to know you can do the full job. Being a woman on the teams, you're going to face scrutiny. Some of it fair, most of it not. How do you plan to handle that? Maya met his gaze directly. The same way I've handled everything else, sir. By being so good at my job that gender becomes irrelevant. The lieutenant commander smiled slightly. Good answer. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm putting you through our team's internal qualification course. It's tougher than the standard stuff you went through in SQT. If you pass, and I think you will, nobody on this team will question whether you belong. Fair enough. More than fair, sir. The team's internal qualification process pushed Maya hard. The existing team members wanted to know if this new person could be trusted when things went bad. They tested her in training scenarios, creating situations that required quick thinking, physical ability, and emotional control. They watched how she handled stress, how she communicated under pressure, how she reacted when plans fell apart. Maya understood what was happening and didn't resent it. These men needed to know she wouldn't be a liability in combat. Their lives might depend on her capability and judgment. She owed them proof, and she was determined to provide it. 3 months after joining the team, during a particularly challenging training evolution in the desert, that proof came in an unexpected way. The team was practicing a hostage rescue scenario, moving through a mock village under simulated enemy fire. Everything was going according to plan until one of the operators, a veteran named Kowalski, took a bad step and seriously injured his ankle. The training immediately shifted from simulation to real emergency. Maya was first to reach him, quickly assessing the injury. Kowalski was a tough operator who had been through multiple combat deployments, but even he was grimacing with pain. The ankle was already swelling badly, possibly fractured. All right, Ski, Maya said calmly, pulling out her medical kit. Going to stabilize this and get you extracted. Need you to tell me your pain level, 1 to 10. 7, Kowalski grunted. Maybe 8. Damn thing might be broken. Maya worked quickly, her training taking over. She immobilized the ankle with practiced efficiency, administered pain medication, and coordinated with the safety team for extraction, all while maintaining awareness of the training scenario continuing around them, ensuring the team could complete their evolution without their injured member. Later, Kowalski made a point of finding her at the team room. Good work out there, Chun. Fast, calm, knew exactly what to do. That's the kind of teammate I want watching my back. Word spread through the team. The new operator had proven herself in a real situation, showing not just medical competence but the ability to stay calm and effective when things went wrong. After that, the testing stopped. She was simply part of the team, accepted without qualification. The squadron's deployment preparations intensified. They would be heading to a classified location in the Middle East, part of ongoing counterterrorism operations. The pre-deployment training pushed them hard, ensuring every skill was sharp, every procedure automatic. They practiced room clearances until they could move through structures like water flowing through pipes, fast and fluid. They practiced medical scenarios until every team member could provide advanced trauma care under fire. They practiced everything until perfect execution became routine. Maya threw herself into the preparation with the same intensity she had brought to BUD/S. She studied the region where they would operate, learning the cultural nuances, the political dynamics, the geography. She reviewed after-action reports from previous deployments, understanding what had worked and what hadn't. She trained with her medical gear until she could treat any injury blindfolded. The night before deployment, the team gathered for a final briefing. Lieutenant Commander Harrison stood before them, his expression serious. Tomorrow we leave for 6 months downrange. Some of you have done this before. Some of you, like Chun, this is your first combat deployment. I want to remind everyone what we're about. We're here to protect each other first, complete the mission second. No heroics, no individual glory. We operate as a team, we come home as a team. Understood? But yeah, the team responded in unison, the SEAL battle cry that had been ingrained in them since their first days at BUD/S. Maya felt the weight of the moment. Tomorrow she would be boarding a plane for a war zone, heading towards situations that would test everything she had learned. This was what she had worked for. But the reality of it was sobering. People would be trying to kill her and her teammates. They would be trying to kill others. The stakes couldn't be higher. That night, she called her mother from the base. "Hi, Mom. Maya, sweetheart. Are you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine. Just wanted to hear your voice. We're deploying tomorrow, going to be out of contact for a while." There was silence on the other end of the line. Sarachin knew what deployment meant, had known this day would come, but the reality still hit hard. Her daughter was going to war. "You be careful," Sarah finally said, her voice tight with emotion. "Come home safe. That's all that matters." "I will, Mom. I promise I'll be as careful as the mission allows." "I'm so proud of you, Maya. I hope you know that. Regardless of what happens, I'm proud of who you've become." "I know, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, baby. Stay safe." The next morning, the squadron boarded a military transport plane for the long flight overseas. Maya settled into the uncomfortable webbed seating, surrounded by her teammates and their gear. The plane's engines roared to life, and she felt the aircraft begin to taxi. This was really happening. She was heading to war as a Navy SEAL, something that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago when she was sitting alone in a high school cafeteria, being called the loser girl. The deployment location was a small base in a country Maya couldn't name publicly. The climate was hot and dusty, the accommodation Spartan. Her team shared a living space that was part barracks, part tactical operations center. Gear covered every surface, weapons always within reach, maps and intelligence photos covering the walls. The mission started almost immediately. Their targets were high-value individuals and terrorist networks, people responsible for planning attacks against civilians and military personnel. The work was dangerous and precise, requiring perfect execution in chaotic environments. They would receive intelligence, plan their approach, execute the raid, and extract, all while managing countless variables that could turn a successful operation into disaster. Maya's first mission came 3 days after arrival. The target was a mid-level commander in a terrorist organization, known to be staying in a compound in a small village. The team would hit the location at night, using night vision equipment to maintain advantage over defenders who expected attacks, but not with such precision. They flew to the target area in helicopters, the aircraft flying low and fast over desert terrain. Maya checked her equipment for the 100th time, ensuring everything was exactly where it should be. Beside her, the other team members made their own final preparations, faces serious behind the paint and tactical gear. The helicopters dropped them half a mile from the target. They moved through the darkness in perfect formation, communicating with hand signals and subtle movements. The village appeared ahead, a cluster of buildings surrounding the target compound. Dogs barked in the distance, but otherwise the night was still. They reached the compound wall and flowed over it like shadows, each operator moving to their assigned position. The team leader gave the signal, and simultaneously they breached 2 entrances, explosives blowing doors inward, flashbangs stunning anyone inside. Maya followed her teammates through the entry point, weapon up, scanning for threats. The interior of the compound erupted in chaos. Armed men scrambled to respond, but the team's speed and night vision gave them overwhelming advantage. Maya moved room to room, clearing spaces according to the procedures she had practiced thousands of times. Her heart pounded, adrenaline sharpening her senses, but her hands remained steady. In one room, she encountered a young man reaching for a weapon. Time seemed to slow. She had a fraction of a second to decide, threat or not threat. Her training made the decision for her. She fired twice, center mass, exactly as she had been taught. The man fell, and she moved past him, continuing to clear the rest of the space. The entire operation took less than 8 minutes from breach to exfiltration. They secured the target, confirmed his identity, and extracted with no friendly casualties. The helicopters picked them up at the designated point, and they flew back to base as the sun began to rise over the desert. Maya sat alone after the debrief, processing what had happened. She had taken her first life. The training had prepared her technically for this moment, but the emotional reality was something else entirely. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, but also no crippling guilt. The man she had shot would have killed her or her teammates given the chance. The choice had been clear even if the consequences were heavy. Lieutenant Commander Harrison found her staring at the wall of their operations center. He said nothing at first, just sat down beside her with 2 bottles of water, handing her one. "First combat kill?" he asked after a moment. "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "It's different from training." "The weight of it?" "Yes, sir." Harrison was quiet for another moment. "I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it. Everyone processes this differently. But I will tell you this. You did your job exactly right. You protected yourself and your team. That man was part of an organization that murders innocent people. Your actions tonight probably saved lives. That has to count for something." "It does, sir." "I know it does. Just taking time to process. Take all the time you need. But also know that we're here. This team, we've all been through it. Nobody expects you to handle everything alone." He stood, pausing before leaving. "You did good work tonight, Chun. Really good work." The missions continued throughout the deployment. Some nights they went out multiple times, hitting targets based on time-sensitive intelligence. Other stretches were quiet, filled with training, equipment maintenance, and waiting. The rhythm of deployment became familiar. Intense action followed by enforced patience, adrenaline highs, and long periods of routine. Maya found her role on the team solidifying. She was the primary medic, but she also proved valuable in other ways. Her language skills allowed her to communicate with locals during operations, gathering intelligence or de-escalating situations before they turned violent. Her calm under pressure made her a natural choice for sensitive missions where restraint was as important as aggression. 3 months into deployment, they received intelligence about a high-value target, someone who had been on their list since before they arrived in country. The target was a bomb maker responsible for attacks that had killed dozens of civilians and several coalition soldiers. Finding him had been a priority for multiple units, but he had proven elusive, constantly moving, and using sophisticated counter-surveillance techniques. The intelligence indicated he would be at a specific location for a limited window. The mission would be complex, requiring infiltration through hostile territory to reach the target before he disappeared again. The team prepared meticulously, studying satellite imagery, building scale models of the target building, rehearsing every phase until it became second nature. The night of the mission, weather conditions were less than ideal. Clouds obscured the moon, and wind buffeted the helicopters as they flew toward the drop point. The pilots fought to maintain stable flight while the team prepared to fast rope into position. This insertion method was always risky, more so in bad weather. But it was the only way to reach the target with sufficient surprise. Maya stood in line, waiting for her turn on the rope. The helicopter door was open, wind roaring past, the ground barely visible below. When her turn came, she grabbed the thick rope and slid down into darkness, landing hard but controlled on rocky ground. Around her, the rest of the team materialized from the sky, each operator securing their position before moving toward the objective. The movement to target took longer than planned. The terrain was rougher than satellite images had suggested, forcing them to move slowly to avoid injury and maintain noise discipline. Every minute they were delayed increased the risk that the target would leave before they arrived. The tension ratcheted up with each passing moment. They reached the building 30 minutes behind schedule. There was no way to know if the target was still inside. The team flowed into their assault positions, each operator ready for whatever they would find. The breach was explosive and fast, doors blown off hinges, the team flooding inside with overwhelming speed. The building's interior was dark and cramped, rooms connected by narrow hallways that limited movement. Maya moved with her assigned element, clearing spaces in sequence. They found the target in a back room, surrounded by bomb-making materials and technical equipment. He reached for a weapon, but the team was faster. He was subdued and secured within seconds, his resistance futile against their speed and coordination. But the mission wasn't over. As they prepared to extract with the prisoner, gunfire erupted from outside. Someone had heard the breach and called in reinforcements. Now they were in the middle of hostile territory with armed fighters closing in from multiple directions. The situation had gone from controlled operation to desperate fight. The team leader made rapid decisions. They would move to an alternate extraction point, fighting through anyone who got in their way. The prisoner would be carried by 2 operators while the rest provided security. It would be difficult, but there was no other choice. They moved out, the night exploding with the sound of gunfire. Tracer rounds cut through the darkness, indicating where hostile forces were positioned. The team returned fire while moving, using tactical movement to avoid being pinned down. Maya stayed close to the prisoner detail, ready to provide medical support if anyone was hit. 2 blocks from the building, one of the operators took a round to the shoulder. He went down hard, his weapon clattering away. Maya was on him immediately, her medical training overriding any fear or hesitation. She dragged him into cover behind a wall while the rest of the team continued to engage the attackers. "Where you hit?" she demanded, her hands already assessing the wound. "Shoulder," he gasped. "Hurts like hell." The wound was serious, but not immediately life-threatening. The round had passed through the fleshy part of his shoulder, missing bone and major blood vessels. Maya packed the wound quickly, applying pressure and securing a bandage. "You can still move?" "Yeah. Not shooting worth a damn, but I can move." "Then we move. Stay with me." She helped him up, supporting his weight while keeping her own weapon ready. The team was already advancing toward the extraction point, engaging targets as they appeared. The wounded operator leaned on Maya, trusting her to get him out. She half-carried, half-dragged him through the chaos, her body running on training and determination. They reached the extraction point as the helicopters swooped in, door gunners laying down suppressive fire. The team piled in, dragging the prisoner and supporting their wounded. As the helicopter lifted off, rounds pinged off the aircraft's armored hull. They had made it out, but barely. Back at base, Maya worked on the wounded operator in their medical facility. The base doctor assisted, but Maya's immediate treatment in the field had prevented serious blood loss. "Good work," the doctor told her. "Quick thinking and solid technique. He'll make a full recovery." The operator, whose name was Jackson, made a point of thanking her once he was stabilized. "You saved my ass out there, Chun. I won't forget it." "Just doing my job," Maya replied. But she felt the weight of his gratitude. This was what being on a team meant. You looked out for each other, trusted each other with your life. She had proven she could be trusted when it mattered most. The successful mission earned their team recognition from higher command. The bomb maker they had captured provided intelligence that led to other operations, dismantling a significant portion of the terrorist network. Lieutenant Commander Harrison made sure Maya received appropriate credit for her actions during the extraction, both her combat effectiveness and her medical care under fire. As deployment continued, Maya found herself settling into the lifestyle in unexpected ways. The intensity, the focus, the sense of purpose, all of it felt natural to her. She had found the place where she belonged, doing work that mattered with people who valued capability over everything else. The girl who had sat alone in a high school cafeteria felt like a character from someone else's life. Letters from home arrived irregularly. Her mother wrote about life in the trailer park, small updates about neighbors, and local news. Coach Bradley sent a letter congratulating her on completing BUD/S, sharing that he had always known she would succeed. Even Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, sent a note saying how proud she was. There were no letters from Jennifer Morrison or anyone else from her high school days. That life had faded completely, replaced by something she could never have imagined back then. She was living proof that the labels people applied meant nothing if you refused to accept them. The deployment wound down after 6 months. They conducted a final series of missions, ensuring a smooth transition for the team that would replace them. Maya packed her gear, cleaned her weapons, and prepared for the journey home. Part of her was eager to return, to see her mother, and sleep in a comfortable bed. But another part would miss this, the clarity of purpose, the intensity of operations, the deep bonds formed with teammates. The flight home was long and uncomfortable, but nobody complained. They were heading back to the United States, to families and friends and lives beyond the mission. Some operators would rotate to other teams or attend advanced training. Others would take leave, recharging before the next deployment cycle. Maya would have 30 days of leave before reporting back to the team. She spent most of her leave with her mother, helping around the trailer, making repairs that had been neglected for years. She also spent time with Coach Bradley, sharing stories about her experiences in ways that wouldn't violate operational security. He listened with the understanding of someone who had been there himself, asking the right questions and knowing when to just let her talk. One afternoon, Maya went for a run through her old neighborhood. The trailer park looked exactly as she remembered, unchanged despite how much she had changed. She ran past the old playground, past the convenience store, past all the landmarks of her childhood. But they held no power over her anymore. They were just places, not prisons. On impulse, she drove to Riverside High School. It was summer, so the building was empty, but she walked around the perimeter anyway. The cafeteria, where she had sat alone. The library where Mrs. Patterson had provided sanctuary. The parking lot where Jennifer Morrison had held court among her privileged friends. All of it seemed smaller somehow, less significant. She thought about the girl she had been, sitting in these same spaces, enduring daily humiliation while planning her escape. That girl had been stronger than anyone knew, tougher than circumstances suggested. That girl had refused to accept the limitations others tried to impose. That girl had become a Navy SEAL. Maya smiled to herself, a private moment of acknowledgement for the journey traveled. They had called her the loser girl. They had been wrong in every way that mattered. But she held no bitterness about it anymore. Those experiences had forged her, made her into someone capable of extraordinary things. In a strange way, she was grateful for the hardship because of what it had produced. Her leave ended, and she returned to Coronado for the next training cycle. The team was preparing for their next deployment, learning new techniques, and maintaining their existing skills. Lieutenant Commander Harrison called her into his office for her performance review. Outstanding marks across the board, he said, reviewing her evaluation. Combat effectiveness, medical capability, leadership potential. The team thinks highly of you, Chun. You've proven yourself multiple times over. Thank you, sir. I'm recommending you for advanced medical training, Harrison continued. There's a program that would make you a special operations combat medic, top-tier stuff. It's demanding, but I think you could handle it. I'd be honored, sir. There's something else, Harrison said, his tone shifting slightly. Command is putting together a demonstration team for a public event. They want to showcase the diversity and capability of modern special operations forces. They've specifically requested female operators who can represent the community well. You interested? Maya hesitated. Public appearances weren't really her style. She preferred to do the work without fanfare or attention. What kind of events, sir? High school career day? Bunch of schools across the country, talking to students about military opportunities. I know it's not exactly combat operations, but it's part of serving too. Inspiring the next generation. Showing kids that paths exist they might not have considered. High school career day? Maya almost laughed at the irony. Which schools, sir? Harrison checked his notes. Let's see, several in California, couple in Texas, one in Oregon, and one called Riverside High School in your home state. Actually, they specifically requested you when they heard you were a graduate. Small world. The morning of the Riverside High School visit arrived with clear blue skies and unseasonably warm weather. Maya sat in the back of a convoy vehicle, watching familiar streets pass by through tinted windows. The town looked the same as when she had left, maybe a bit more worn, but essentially unchanged. She felt nothing as they drove past the trailer park where she had grown up, past the convenience store, past all the landmarks of her former life. The convoy included several vehicles, but the centerpiece was an Apache helicopter that would be landing on the school's athletic field. The demonstration team had coordinated with local authorities to ensure safety, creating a spectacle that would be remembered long after they left. Maya wore her dress uniform with her trident prominently displayed. Other operators from various special operations units accompanied her, creating a representation of America's most elite forces. They arrived at the school an hour before the assembly would begin. Principal Watson, who had been vice principal during Maya's time at Riverside, greeted them enthusiastically. He was a balding man in his 50s who seemed genuinely excited about the event, shaking hands vigorously with each operator. This is such an honor, he gushed. Our students are so lucky to have this opportunity. And, Petty Officer Chun, we're especially proud that one of our own graduates has achieved so much. We've been following your career with great interest. Maya doubted that seriously but said nothing. The The school hadn't shown much interest in her success when she was a student here. But that didn't matter anymore. She wasn't here for validation from administrators who had been blind to the bullying she endured. She was here for the kids who might be sitting where she once sat, feeling hopeless and trapped. The assembly was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Students began filing into the gymnasium, filling the bleachers with the chaotic energy of adolescence. Maya scanned the crowd from backstage, seeing herself in some of their faces. The outcasts sitting alone. The kids in worn clothes who avoided eye contact. The ones who had learned that drawing attention only brought pain. She also saw the popular kids, the ones who sat together in confident clusters, laughing and comfortable in their social dominance. Among them, she spotted Jennifer Morrison's younger sister, a freshman who had inherited the same blonde hair and confident bearing. The girl was surrounded by friends, clearly operating in the same social circles that Jennifer had dominated years ago. The Apache helicopter arrived precisely at 10, the thunderous sound of its rotors drowning out all other noise. Students rushed to the windows, craning to see the massive machine settle onto the athletic field. The timing was perfect, creating exactly the dramatic entrance that would capture everyone's attention. When the assembly began moments later, the students were already energized and curious. Principal Watson welcomed everyone and gave a brief speech about service and opportunity. Then, he introduced the demonstration team, listing their accomplishments and explaining what each branch of Special Operations Forces did. When he got to Maya, his voice took on extra enthusiasm. And we have a very special guest today. Petty Officer Maya Chen graduated from this very school just a few years ago. Many of you probably remember her or have older siblings who went to school with her. After graduation, she enlisted in the Navy and successfully completed training to become a Navy SEAL, one of the most elite warriors in the world. Please join me in welcoming home one of Riverside High's own success stories. The applause was polite, but confused. Many students clearly didn't remember Maya or couldn't reconcile the confident operator on stage with whoever they might recall from a few years ago. But some faces in the crowd showed recognition, and Maya saw shock register as they realized who was standing before them. The demonstration team showed videos of training and operations, careful to use only approved footage that wouldn't compromise security. They talked about the requirements for joining special operations, the training pipelines, and what daily life looked like. Students asked questions, some serious, some clearly designed to sound clever in front of their peers. Then came the individual presentations. Each operator shared their journey, explaining how they had arrived at this career and what it meant to them. When Maya's turn came, she approached the microphone with the same calm she brought to everything. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "Principal Watson mentioned that I graduated from this school. What he didn't mention was that my time here wasn't easy. I came from the trailer park on the east side. My mother worked multiple jobs to keep us afloat. My clothes were secondhand. My lunch came in a reused paper bag. And because of those things, I was treated by many of you, or your older siblings, as someone who didn't matter. Someone less than. I was called names I won't repeat, excluded from social circles, made to feel invisible or worse." The gymnasium had gone completely silent. Students who had been whispering to friends stopped mid-sentence. Teachers along the walls leaned forward. This wasn't the usual inspirational speech they had been expecting. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy," Maya continued. "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something important. The labels people put on you, the judgments they make about your worth based on your circumstances or appearance or social status, those things only have power if you accept them. I refuse to accept them." She paused, making eye contact with students scattered throughout the crowd. "When I was sitting in these same bleachers during assemblies, I felt hopeless sometimes, like my life was already determined by where I started. But I made a decision. I decided that I would become someone so undeniably capable that no one could ever dismiss me again. Not because of where I came from, but because of what I chose to become." Maya gestured to her uniform, to the trident on her chest. "This represents one of the hardest achievements in the military. Less than 1% of people who try make it through SEAL training. I'm not special because of some innate talent. I'm here because I refused to quit, because I worked harder than I thought possible, because I believed I could be more than circumstances suggested. And Every single one of you has that same choice. She saw some students sitting up straighter, paying attention in ways they hadn't been before. Others looked uncomfortable, perhaps recognizing themselves in the story of the girl who had been cruel to someone perceived as lesser. I'm not saying everyone should join the military, Maya said. This path isn't right for everyone. But whatever you choose to do with your life, understand this. You are not limited by other people's opinions. You're not defined by your current situation. The only limits that truly matter are the ones you accept for yourself. So reject the limits. Decide who you want to become, and then work like hell to make it happen. She stepped back from the microphone, her piece said. The applause that followed started slowly, but built to something genuine and loud. Students were standing, teachers were clapping enthusiastically, and Maya saw several young people with tears in their eyes, perhaps seeing possibility for the first time. After the assembly, students were allowed to visit the vehicles and equipment outside. The Apache helicopter became an immediate center of attention, its impressive size and firepower fascinating to teenagers who had only seen such machines in movies. Maya stood near the aircraft, answering questions and posing for photos with students brave enough to approach. A small group of girls approached hesitantly. They were clearly not part of the popular crowd, wearing modest clothes and carrying an air of uncertainty. One of them, a sophomore with dark hair and anxious eyes, spoke up. Petty Officer Chen, can I ask you something? Of course, Maya replied. Was it really as bad as you said? The bullying and stuff? Because sometimes I feel like maybe I'm just being too sensitive, like I should just toughen up and deal with it. Maya recognized the doubt in the girl's voice, the internalized shame that came from being told your pain didn't matter. It was bad, she confirmed. Some days I didn't want to come to school at all. But here's what I learned. Feeling hurt by cruelty isn't weakness. It's being human. The strength isn't in pretending it doesn't hurt. The strength is in not letting it stop you from pursuing your goals. Another girl in the group spoke up. Did you ever get revenge? Did you come back here to show them they were wrong about you? Maya considered the question carefully. I came back here to show you that escape is possible. To prove to students who might be in the same situation I was in that there's a future beyond these walls. As for the people who made my life difficult, she paused. They don't matter to me anymore. Living well, becoming someone I'm proud of, that's better than any revenge. The girls nodded, absorbing her words. One of them asked for a photo, and soon Maya was surrounded by students who wanted pictures with a real Navy SEAL. She obliged patiently, understanding that for some of these kids, this moment might be a turning point, the day they realized they could aspire to more than their current circumstances suggested. From across the field, Maya noticed someone watching her. A woman in her late 20s stood at the edge of the crowd, blonde hair now shorter than it had been in high school, but still recognizable. Jennifer Morrison had come to see the demonstration, perhaps drawn by curiosity about her former classmate's transformation. Their eyes met across the distance. Jennifer's expression was complex, mixing shame, regret, and something that might have been respect. She made no move to approach, seeming to understand that she had no right to Maya's time or attention. After a moment, she turned and walked back toward the school building, shoulders slightly hunched in a posture that suggested the weight of remembered cruelty. Maya watched her go without feeling either satisfaction or anger. Jennifer Morrison had been a child operating with a child's cruelty and limited understanding. She had likely grown up since then, gained perspective, recognized the harm she had caused. The apology letter suggested as much. But Maya had moved so far beyond needing that recognition that the encounter meant almost nothing. What mattered were the kids currently sitting in the same bleachers where she had once sat. The ones who needed to hear that their current situation wasn't their final destination. Those were the people she had come back for. Coach Bradley found her near the Apache as the event was winding down. He looked older than when she had last seen him, more gray in his hair, but his eyes held the same sharp intelligence and warmth. He approached with a broad smile, shaking her hand firmly. I knew you'd make it, he said simply. From that first morning when I saw you running, I knew you had something special. Not just physical ability, but that refusal to quit that separates the ones who talk from the ones who do. I couldn't have done it without your help, Maya replied honestly. You were the first person who saw potential in me. who helped me understand what was possible. I just pointed you in a direction, Bradley said. You did all the hard work. And now look at you, coming back here and inspiring the next generation. That's something to be proud of. They talked for a few more minutes, catching up on life and sharing perspectives. Before leaving, Bradley handed her a folder. Some letters from current students who heard you were coming. They wrote to you, wanted to share their own stories. Thought you might want to read them when you have time. Maya took the folder, feeling its weight. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters from students who had found hope in knowing someone from their school had achieved something extraordinary. She would read every one, and she would respond to as many as time allowed. If her story could light a fire in even one of these kids, the entire visit would be worthwhile. The demonstration team prepared to depart, packing up equipment and preparing the Apache for its flight to the next location. Students lingered, reluctant to see the spectacle end. Maya took a final look at Riverside High School, the building that had housed so much pain and struggle during her adolescence. She felt nothing but indifference now. This place had no power over her anymore. It was just a building, just a memory, just one stop on a journey that had taken her far beyond its walls. As the Apache lifted off, rotors beating the air with thunderous force, Maya looked down at the school shrinking below. She saw students waving, teachers standing in clusters, and, somewhere among them, the ghosts of her former self and all the kids she had been. That girl was gone now, transformed by determination and hard work into someone new. But she hadn't been erased. Everything that girl had endured, every moment of pain and humiliation, had built the foundation for who Maya had become. The helicopter banked and turned, heading toward the next school on their tour. Maya settled into her seat, opening the folder Coach Bradley had given her. The first letter was from a freshman girl who wrote about feeling invisible at school, about being bullied for her weight, and her family's financial situation. She ended the letter by saying that hearing Maya's story had made her believe that she could be more than what others saw. Maya pulled out a notebook and began composing a response. She would tell this girl what she wished someone had told her at that age, that the pain was real and valid, that it would shape her if she let it, and that she had the power to decide whether that shaping made her bitter or made her strong. She would tell her to take the hurt and transform it into fuel, to use every insult and dismissal as motivation to prove the small-minded wrong. The tour continued for 2 more weeks, visiting schools across the country. At each stop, Maya shared her story and saw it resonate with students who felt trapped by circumstance. She received hundreds of emails and letters from young people who thanked her for showing them what was possible. Some wanted to join the military. Others simply wanted to know that their current situation wasn't permanent, that they could overcome and achieve. When the tour ended, Maya returned to her team in Coronado. They were deep in preparation for their next deployment, and she threw herself back into the work with relief. Public speaking had its value, but this was where she belonged, on a team, preparing for missions, doing the actual work rather than talking about it. Lieutenant Commander Harrison pulled her aside after a training evolution. Got some interesting feedback from the school tour, he said. Apparently you made quite an impression. Several students have already contacted recruiters citing your presentation as their inspiration, and the Navy is pleased with the publicity. They want to do more events like this, with you as a featured speaker. I'd rather focus on the mission, sir, Maya replied honestly. Harrison nodded. I figured you'd say that. And I respect it. But understand that what you did on that tour is also mission essential. We need the next generation to see service as a viable path. We need young people, especially young women, to know they can do this. You're proof of concept for a lot of people. That matters. Understood, sir. I'll do whatever events are required. But I'd prefer to keep them limited. Fair enough. Now get back to your team. We deploy in 3 months, and I want everyone razor sharp. The months before deployment passed in their usual rhythm of intense training. Maya continued to develop her medical skills, attending an advanced course that taught techniques used by special operations medics. She also worked on her leadership abilities, understanding that eventually she would need to take on more responsibility within the team. One evening, while cleaning her gear in the team room, she received a video call from her mother. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the screen, looking happier and healthier than Maya had seen her in years. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother said, smiling broadly. "I have news. I finally got the promotion at the dry cleaner, the one I've been working toward for years. It comes with a significant raise and better hours. I'm going to be able to cut back to just 2 jobs instead of 3. Mom, that's incredible." Maya felt genuine joy for her mother's success. The woman had worked herself to exhaustion for so long, and this was a well-deserved break. "And there's more," Sarah continued. "You know how you've been sending money home? I've been saving most of it, not spending it on myself. I have enough now for a down payment on a small house. Nothing fancy, but it has a real yard and working heat, and it's not a trailer. I put in an offer yesterday, and they accepted. I'm buying a house, Maya. At my age, I'm finally buying a house." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother's pride and joy were evident, and knowing that her military pay had contributed to making this possible made every hardship of training and deployment worthwhile. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. You deserve this, and so much more. None of this would be possible without you," Sarah said, her own eyes glistening. "Your success, your sacrifice, it's changed our lives. But I want you to know something, baby. Even if you had never joined the military, even if you were still in that trailer park working a minimum wage job, I would be just as proud of you. You're a good person, Maya. That matters more than any achievement. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Come home safe from your next deployment. I want to show you the new house." After the call ended, Maya sat in the quiet team room, feeling a sense of completion. She had achieved what she set out to do. She had proven that circumstances don't define potential. She had provided a better life for her mother. She had found her place in the world, doing work that mattered with people who valued her for who she was rather than where she came from. The girl they had called the loser had disappeared completely, replaced by a Navy SEAL who had earned her place through merit and determination. But Maya never forgot that girl. She carried her forward as a reminder of what could be overcome, as proof that the labels people applied meant nothing compared to the truth you created through action. Years would pass. Maya would complete multiple deployments, earn promotions, and eventually become a team leader herself. She would mentor young operators who joined the teams, passing on the lessons she had learned. She would occasionally do speaking events, always focusing on the message that transformation was possible for anyone willing to work for it. But she never forgot Riverside High School, or the cafeteria table near the emergency exit, or the whispered insults in hallways. Those memories remained as touchstones, reminders of how far she had traveled and why the journey mattered. They were proof that the opinions of others had no power unless you granted it to them, that the only judgment that mattered was the one you passed on yourself. On quiet nights between missions, when she had time to reflect, Maya would sometimes think about Jennifer Morrison and the others who had made her life difficult. She hoped they had grown into better people, gained perspective, learned compassion. But whether they had or hadn't didn't affect her life in any meaningful way. They were characters from a story that had ended long ago, while her story continued to unfold in ways that teenage girls sitting alone in a cafeteria could never have imagined. She had become someone who protected others, who led by example, who proved through daily action that where you started had nothing to do with where you finished. The loser girl had been a lie, a false narrative imposed by people who didn't matter. The truth was so much better. She was Maya Chun, Navy SEAL, and she had earned every bit of that title through blood, sweat, tears, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. The Apache helicopter story would follow her throughout her career, becoming something of a legend in both her hometown and within the SEAL community. The image of her arriving at her old high school in that powerful machine perfectly captured the arc of her journey, from dismissed and overlooked to undeniably capable. It became a symbol for anyone who had ever been underestimated, a reminder that spectacular transformations were possible for those willing to pursue them. But for Maya, the helicopter was just transportation. The real transformation had happened internally, in the thousands of small choices she had made over years. To wake up early and train when she could have slept. To study when she could have given up. To persist when quitting would have been easier. To believe in possibility when evidence suggested limitation. Those choices, accumulated over time, had created the person she had become. And that person, looking back at the journey traveled, could finally say with absolute certainty that none of it had been wasted. The pain had purpose. The struggle had meaning. The girl they called loser had become someone extraordinary, not despite the hardship, but because of what she chose to do with it. That was the real story, the one that mattered most, the one she would carry forward into whatever came next. Riverside High School, her old hunting ground, the place where she had been dismissed and ridiculed. They wanted her to come back and speak. The universe had a sense of humor. "I'll do it, sir," Maya said, making her decision. Not for revenge or vindication, but because she remembered being the kid in the corner who needed to see someone prove that escape was possible. If she could be that example for even one student, it would be worth it. The demonstration team began preparing for their tour. They would visit schools over a 2-week period, bringing equipment and vehicles to show students what Special Operations Forces actually did. Maya would be part of a panel discussion, answering questions, and sharing her experiences in ways that wouldn't compromise security. Thereafter, action review, going over every aspect of the mission. What had worked, what could be improved, lessons to apply to future operations. It was professional and thorough, the kind of analysis that separated good teams from exceptional ones. By the time second phase ended, only 38 candidates remained from the original class. They had become a tight unit, bound by shared suffering and mutual respect. Maya had found her place among them, not as an outsider or a target, but as an equal. Gender didn't matter here. Only capability mattered. Third phase taught land warfare, weapons, tactics, demolitions. This was where the training shifted from pure physical endurance to applied skill. Candidates learned to shoot accurately under stress, to move as a team, to plan and execute missions. They learned about explosives and how to use them strategically. They went on long movements through the desert, carrying heavy packs and weapons, navigating to distant objectives. Maya discovered she had a talent for the tactical side of the training. Her years of studying military history and strategy gave her a framework for understanding the lessons being taught. While some candidates struggled to think clearly under stress, she found clarity in chaos, making decisions quickly and confidently. The final test was a simulation of a real mission, complete with live fire, explosions, and intense time pressure. Teams had to infiltrate an objective, complete their mission, and extract while being hunted by role players simulating enemy forces. Everything they had learned over 6 months came together in this exercise. After everyone had left, they stood together in the small kitchen, washing dishes by hand because the ancient dishwasher had broken years ago and never been replaced. "Not just because you're joining the military. I'm proud of who you've become, how you've handled everything life has thrown at you." Maya hugged her mother, feeling the thinness of her frame, noticing the gray threading through her dark hair. "I'm going to make things better," she promised. "Once I get through training and start earning a real paycheck, things will get easier for you." Sarachin pulled back, cupping her daughter's face in her work-roughened hands. "That's not why you should do this. You should do this for yourself, because it's what you want. Don't carry me as a burden. I'll be fine." But Maya knew better. Her mother would continue working herself to exhaustion, aging before her time, struggling to make ends meet. The military pay would help. The signing bonus would help. And if Maya made it through SEAL training, the special warfare pay would help even more. This was about proving herself, yes, but it was also about giving back to the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. July arrived with summer heat that made the trailer feel like an oven. Maya's departure date approached. She had packed her single duffel bag with the few personal items she was allowed to bring. Some photos, a few letters, and the book Coach Bradley had given her. Everything else she was leaving behind. The accumulated stuff of a childhood she was ready to shed like an old skin. The night before she left, she walked through her neighborhood one last time. The trailer park was quiet, most residents already asleep or watching television inside their cramped homes. She walked past the playground where she had played as a child, the broken swings creaking in the warm breeze. She walked past the convenience store where she had bought cheap snacks with carefully counted change. She walked past the bus stop where she had waited on cold mornings, heading to a school where she never quite belonged. This place had shaped her, but it would not define her. She was leaving it behind, heading towards something greater. The girl they had called loser was about to become someone they couldn't imagine.